And in a series of Truth Social posts from President Trump, giving some clues to what could be happening behind the scenes as the Israel-Iran conflict rages on. The president left the G7 summit earlier than planned last night as he promised something bigger was in the works. Joining us live now from Alberta, Canada is NTD's Fiona G. Fiona, what can you tell us?
Well, Steve, all eyes are on the Middle East. Some of President Trump's latest Truth Social posts shed a little bit more light on what the U.S.'s stance could be currently on this entire conflict. In one post, President Trump writes, quote, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, at least not for now." And then he goes on to say, "Our patience is wearing thin." Now, in another post, the president also wrote, quote, "We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran." President Trump has also emphasized and clarified that he's not looking for any sort of peace talks with Iran right now. And on Monday evening, actually, before even leaving the G7 summit, he also warned that any residents in Tehran should evacuate. Now, in the wake of all of this, earlier Tuesday, the State Department hosted a press briefing, during which time spokeswoman Tammy Bruce had this to say. Listen.
That is up to the president. He is the singular guiding hand about what will be occurring from this point forward, as he has been.
And President Trump continues to reiterate this stance on Iran. On Air Force One, before he touched down in Washington, D.C., he said that he was not looking for a ceasefire. He was looking for a real end to this war. And then on Truth Social, he posted in all caps, "Unconditional surrender." And President Trump also disputed an earlier statement made by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard when she said that she believed Iran was not making any nuclear weapons. Listen.
Always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
And these are ideas that we constantly hear the president repeat. The White House said that since taking office once again, President Trump has said no less than 15 times that he believes Iran should not have any nuclear weapons, and that since the campaign trail and even earlier than that, he's repeated similar statements no less than 40 times. In a Truth Social, or rather in a lengthy X post, J.D. Vance, the vice president, he said that through his interactions with the president, he believes that Trump's stance on the Israel-Iran conflict is very consistent, and that the president's ultimate goal is to protect American troops and American citizens. Now, the president did have a meeting that lasted around one hour and 20 minutes with his National Security Council in the Situation Room earlier on Tuesday. Steve?
And Fiona, the president was supposed to give a major press briefing there for you and other reporters attending the G7, but obviously plans interrupted, coming back abruptly to Washington, D.C. Now that he is back in D.C., what is taking place there at the G7 summit where you are?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the early departure, President Trump did not host that press conference, but the G7 summit continued as previously planned. President Trump's early departure did mean that he did not have the chance to have a bilateral meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. However, the Russia-Ukraine war did remain a very key topic of discussion at the G7 summit. President Trump also missed a bilateral meeting with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, but on Tuesday, the White House confirmed that after returning to D.C., the president did have a call with the Mexican president, and that call went very well. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent did stay behind in Alberta to continue negotiating those trade deals. Steve, back to you.
NTD's Fiona G. live at the G7 summit in Canada. Thank you. And as the war between Israel and Iran intensifies, thousands of residents evacuating the Iranian capital. And Israel's defense minister saying they plan to strike significant targets soon in Tehran. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
On Tuesday, a long line was seen at this gas station in Tehran as the city has been emptying out. Thousands of residents began fleeing the city soon after President Trump posted on Truth Social saying everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Trump, aboard Air Force One, was asked why he told residents to evacuate.
I just want people to be safe.
On the same day, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said they were planning to soon strike very significant targets in Tehran. And he gave a warning to Iran's supreme leader while standing near the impact site where an Iranian missile hit.
If you continue to commit acts of war and launch missiles at the civilian population in Israel, your fate will be exactly like that of the dictator in the neighboring country to Iran, whose end is well known.
On the same day, Israel reported killing Iran's top military commander, Ali Shadmani, and he only held the position as wartime chief of staff for a few days, as Israel reported killing the other top military commander at the beginning of the war. Israel released a map showing the locations of the targets they've struck so far, including military commanders, nuclear targets, and nuclear scientists, air defense systems, and surface-to-surface missiles. Israel Defense Forces spokesman gave an update on the war.
We have delivered significant blows to the Iranian regime, and as such, they have been pushed back into central Iran. They are now focusing their efforts on conducting missile fire from the area of Isfahan. We are aiming at military targets. They are attacking civilian homes.
Israel's foreign minister also blamed Iran for targeting civilians as he visited the site of impact of an Iranian missile as well. Meanwhile, the spokesman for Iran's defense ministry appeared to be undeterred in an interview on Tuesday, and he said that Israel will be defeated. And while residents in Tehran have been evacuating, some residents in Israel have decided to go to the beach in the midst of war.
For me, it's very relaxing to be around the sea, and I know my whereabouts. If I need to go into shelter, I can go under that bridge, or I can go to my car and go back up in the mountain.
So far, 24 people have been killed in Israel and more than 500 injured. Jason Perry, NTD News.
So what might China's interest be in Iran? And how much is the CCP supporting the Iranian regime in its conflict with Israel? Joining me now from Jerusalem is Simcha Brodsky, journalist at JFeed and host of Overnight Israel. Simcha Brodsky, thank you so much for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So you're in Israel right now, Jerusalem. What is the situation like on the ground? Tell us what the atmosphere has been like.
So the atmosphere in Jerusalem is actually fairly peaceful compared to the rest of the country. As we've seen, most of the action lately and most of the rocket impacts have been along the northern to central coasts, though even just a couple minutes ago, we've had some action down in the south, Beersheba, in the Negev area as well. The general, I'd say, ambiance here in Israel is pretty standard. I think the people here are generally used to this sort of thing happening, though obviously the scale is much larger now than it's been, for example, with rockets from Gaza or even from Lebanon, where most of the rockets were sort of secluded to the north. Now we're seeing alerts across the entire country before they can pinpoint exactly where those rockets will fall. So there's a lot of areas of the country that will get alerts that will tell them, okay, there might be rockets in your area in the next couple minutes, go find shelter. And then there are no rockets in those areas. So there's a lot of that happening, a lot of uncertainty, a little bit of stress, but generally during the daytime, people are out and about, people are enjoying themselves, shops are open, the general atmosphere is fairly peaceful. And then the nighttime is generally where the action happens. You'll see the stress sort of turn up a notch once the sun starts to set.
Now, the Epoch Times Hebrew edition is reporting that a Cargo-Lux cargo flight from China to Luxembourg disappeared from radar over Turkmenistan. The company denies entering Iranian airspace, blaming incorrect data. This is leading to some serious speculation that there's a possible air bridge right now between the Chinese Communist Party and Iran. Reports also say at least 2 Chinese planes have landed in Iran. What do we know about this so far?
Yeah, well, Steve, you said it perfectly. As of right now, the data is sort of limited because the transponders did go off, so we don't have the tracking. However, a lot of open source intelligence experts and a lot of reporters are speculating that this was a cargo shipment to Iran from the CCP. Now, that might include, for example, radar technology or drones or any sort of assistance that China might be able to give to Iran that is found within a cargo plane. It's hard to say exactly what it is that would be on that flight.
A lot of things go unchecked, like Chinese infiltration right here in the United States. China looks to show itself as a potential peace broker by calling for talks to end the conflict. At the same time, it says it condemns Israel. Is the CCP trying to buy time for Iran, do you think?
It's a good question. I don't personally believe that they're trying to buy time as much as they are trying to protect their personal interests in the matter. As we know, China and Iran have had an agreement for quite a while. Iran is the main supplier of oil to China, and any sort of rocking of the boat in Iran could mean some sort of economic backlash on the ground in China, and obviously China wants to avoid that. So on the front, it's perceived as being peaceful, peace brokerage, there's a lot of that going on. But when you really look into the details, you can start to get a little bit suspicious, because we do know for a fact that China has vested interest in Iran being fully operational and thriving in the region so that they can produce as much oil as possible, and so that they could sell it to China. And so China can sort of bypass the sanctions and bypass the Western blockade and sort of the unspoken of blockade that the West has on China.
You're really unpacking an interesting point, which is that alliance between China and Iran and how interdependent these two countries may be. Do China's potential material or diplomatic support efforts embolden Iran and risk prolonging this conflict?
I do believe that they embolden Iran. I don't believe that they are aiming to prolong the conflict. However, an interesting point on the prolonging aspect, on the Israeli side, and most of the data that you can look at shows that China's rocket supply is very much dwindling. On June 13th, we saw the largest rocket barrage so far from Iran of about 150 to 200 rockets. I don't remember exactly the number, but every single barrage henceforth has been smaller and smaller and smaller in volume until today, where we're literally seeing 3 rockets in one volley, and it does. So some people are thinking, well, that means that they're just losing the war, this is all they've got. And Israel's been smashing the launchers before they could even launch these rockets. And they have limited launchers, but a much larger supply of rockets. The estimation is about 2,000 to 3,000 rockets, but only a few hundred, about 300 mobile launchers. So really, Israel is putting a lot of effort into destroying those launchers, because no launchers equals no rockets, rendering them essentially obsolete. So the other side is saying, no, Iran has something in the bag. They have something up their sleeve that they haven't shown yet. You see all the pro-IRGC accounts on social media making claims like that. However, there is really no evidence. It's more of a faith-based claim than anything else. China does not want to see their interests infringed upon in the Middle East. They have always maintained some sort of, they try to be unbiased, meaning they have relationships with Israel. They built their light rail system, their train system in Israel. They have tons of workers here. There was a recent deal this past couple of years for 4 ports at the Haifa port, 4 docks for boats that China was going to be in charge of, which has led to a lot of people being nervous and skeptical of that as well. So China aims to maintain some sort of unbiased front. However, we can clearly see that that's not really the case.
Simcha Brodsky, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe in Israel.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And the State Department establishing a new task force to help Americans in the Middle East. That's as the FBI declassifies documents alleging that the Chinese Communist Party has interfered in the 2020 election. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley reports from the State Department.
The Department of State has established the Middle East Task Force to help coordinate support for U.S. citizens, our U.S. diplomatic missions, and personnel and diplomatic engagement.
The State Department announced that it had established a Middle East task force to inform and support U.S. citizens over in the region. Now, it has no clear plans that were announced to evacuate U.S. citizens from the region, but State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce said that U.S. citizens are urged not to travel.
Over the past week, to help keep U.S. citizens informed, we have issued more than 30 security alerts to countries in the region. We remind U.S. citizens not to travel to Israel or Iraq and not to travel to Iran under any circumstances.
This comes as President Trump says that if Iran strikes U.S. targets, there will be repercussions. That's as the U.S. worked to evacuate its Iraq embassy prior to Israel's strike, with a partial evacuation with other embassies in the region. Meanwhile, FBI Director Kash Patel says that he's declassified documents that accuse the Chinese Communist Party of interfering in the 2020 presidential election. Patel sent the information to the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Chuck Grassley. Patel also told the news outlet Just the News that the report alleges that the CCP planned to make fake driver's licenses to make fake mail-in ballots, all for Joe Biden. Senator Grassley requested this information and raised concerns earlier that this information, when it was looked at prior, wasn't fully vetted. Patel also said that previous allegations were substantiated but abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. Former FBI Director Christopher Wray said that there were no known plots of foreign interference ahead of the 2020 election. Reporting from the State Department, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And New York City Comptroller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander has been released from jail after he was handcuffed and arrested this morning at an immigration court in New York City. Homeland Security says he was impeding ICE agents. NTD's David Lamb has more on the incident.
New York City Comptroller and Democratic mayoral candidate Brad Lander was handcuffed Tuesday by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. A post on Lander's X account, attributed to his wife Meg Barnett, said that Lander was escorting a defendant out of immigration court. The video appears to show masked agents trying to separate Lander and the defendant, whose face is blurred.
I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Where is the warrant?
At one point, Lander was separated from the individual. Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said Lander was arrested for assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer.
You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Please stay back. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant.
Lander's wife said this happened right after the individual's immigration case was dismissed.
They did say to him in the courtroom, you have the right to appeal this decision. You will have a month to do so. They give him a date in July. So the guy thinks he has a month to appeal. Nobody says ICE is waiting for you on the other side of the door.
I know I will have due process and I will have a good lawyer and my rights will be protected. But Edgardo has no due process rights and no lawyer.
Lander has advocated for bolstering legal services for immigrants. Tuesday's incident comes days after police handcuffed Senator Alex Padilla. He was forcibly removed from a Homeland Security press conference in Los Angeles. The White House has addressed the incident, saying Padilla interrupted the event without wearing his Senate pin. David Lamb, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.